Springfield's Talk 1041. Hey, everybody. Good Tuesday morning. Welcome to the show. My name is Nick Reed. We've got a happy hour coming up on Friday at Retro Metro. Love for you to swing by. Maybe you can make a reservation, sit down, have dinner sometime afterwards or during if you'd like to. Sometimes we have folks love to sit, have some drinks, and enjoy one another's company or stand. And then afterwards, sit down for a nice romantic dinner. I recommend you do reservations if you're going to want to do that because they do oftentimes fill up. Cam is going to be there. I talked with her yesterday.
Yay!
She said that she's going to bring Mark.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, so those of you who have gone on, well, just the last couple of Great Escapes, you may not know Mark. Mark is Cam's husband, and we always like for him to go along on trips as well. If I recall, the very first Great Escape we did, he came along. She brought him because I could be completely wrong on this, but it seems as if she told me at that point she had never taken him along on any of the trips she had done before. And so she decided, oh, this would be a good one. And everybody just liked him so much, and he was such a help that we were like, well, Mark has to come back as well. But the last few Great Escapes, he hasn't been able to. I don't know if he's going to be able to for this Great Escape or not, but he will be at Happy Hour on Friday. When I talked to her yesterday, she said that with the slots, the junior suites that we have reserved at this time, I mentioned that we were down to, 20 couples left, 20 junior suites left. It's as of yesterday morning, that number is down to 10.
Ooh,
And so, yes, getting very close on that. And it's moving along at a clip that we're accustomed to. The last Great Escape that we did had a much lower number of people, but we had one earlier in the year, and a lot of people with the election coming up, they said, we don't know if we want to leave the country with the election coming up. We don't know what's going to happen. And so it was a bit of an anomaly. We're back on track like with all the others in which we have had upwards of, I think 88 we had once, but we were like, we have no more room. We try to keep it small enough so that it still has that we're together group intimacy if you want to be part of that. And that way it just doesn't become one giant massive grouping of people in which nobody really has any idea what's going on. And of course, usually with the chartered flight, there's only a certain amount of seats anyhow. But I'm getting off into the weeds. Point being, if you've not gotten a hold of Cam yet, in order to make that reservation, they're getting eaten up quickly, and we are down in the final stretch here. And as I mentioned, she will be at Happy Hour at Retro Metro. So it'll be a great time for us all the great escapers to get together, and everyone else as well. Of course, we want you to definitely join us. So we'll update you, though it's nothing that is directly for most of us impacting, but our friends in Canada had their elections. Justin, our Canadian friend, the official Canadian ambassador to KSGF that we actually got to know, met, and had on the show at the last Great Escape in Mexico. I don't have my phone. I forgot the exact message I got when I woke up this morning was something along the lines of, please invade Canada. Very unhappy with the outcome of the election. And it does make one shakes one's head when you think, it's so clear. So clear. One of the two, Mark Carney, he's like, I am going to make it a lot more expensive to live in Canada. I mean, just flat out. We're going to do this carbon tax thing. We're just going to pulverize certain industries. It is going to be even more expensive to be a Canadian than it was, than it is currently today. And you look at that and you think that's just thank you. You think that it's just who in the right mind would vote for that? Who would vote to make life worse? But we see it here all the time. I mean, look at people in Los Angeles or Chicago or St. Louis or increasingly in Springfield, though we aren't to that point quite yet. These people that vote for the same people, and it doesn't have to be the exact same person, but people of the same ideological approach to running a government. and your liberties and your freedoms. And so we do it too in this country. Now, you may not, and I may not, but there are pockets in this country that does do it. Yeah, so the message that I got from our ambassador up there in Canada, and not official ambassador, of course. I just say ambassador to KSGF because when we were in Mexico on the last Great Escape after the election, we just one of our listeners happened to meet him, Joe, I believe it was, and he came on the show, and he was a former left winger, and over time became much more conservative. Was a big fan of Polyev, who actually lost his local seat yesterday as well, though he's still going to be the party leader. Things work a little bit differently up there. And the message that he sent me at 10:21 p.m. last night: I'm perfectly fine with Canada becoming the 51st state. Please invade, in all caps. So we should definitely pray for our fellow human beings up there in Canada. We've got weather in a moment. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see showers and thunderstorms throughout the day with a high around 68. Tonight, rain will continue with a low around 59. For Wednesday, more rain with a high near 74. And on Thursday, even more rain with a high near 72.
Dying isn't fun when you have a loved one die. It isn't fun. It already is. It just sucks. But then if you have sort of, the unplanned death or people who die and you find out, oh, they've got all these different, financial situations going on. And then we got family and who gets this and that. And they didn't plan for it. Or they wrote it out on a piece of paper, but then somebody challenges it. People are at their worst oftentimes, making decisions based off of the emotional state. You get taken advantage of at times because you're not in that best state of mind. Families fight. Sometimes families already fight, but sometimes otherwise families that get along perfectly fine find themselves fighting because of it. Ozarks Elder Law will help you do the hard thing now so that it's not even harder later. It's going to be hard no matter what, and you think, it's not fun. Don't want to deal with that. Don't want to do that planning right now. It's uncomfortable. Well, imagine how it is when you're doing all this while you're trying to bury your loved one at the same time, right? And then maybe 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road, spending lots and lots of money doing it. Ozarks Elder Law can help you prevent that from happening. You can find them at ozarkselderlaw.com, also ksgf.com under Nick's endorsements. Liberals are the projected winners in Canada. Mark Carney retaining leadership. Now, things are done differently in Canada, so oftentimes it can be a little confusing. They have numerous parties. While the quote, Liberals are expected to win, they are not expected to have the majority. This is because of a multi-party system now. We also have, technically, I suppose, a multi-party system because any party that wants to exist and hit certain benchmarks can not only be on the ballot and have candidates on the ballot, but can be elected. We have some libertarians, we've got some constitutional parties, and in some states, independent is an official party, while in other states it's not an official party. A lot of people, complain that it's the two-party system, that's the problem that we have. Well, that's what the voters choose. And I'm not saying that there aren't perhaps better ways that voting could make it more accommodating for so-called third parties to have a greater impact. I happen to believe that ultimately it's just the way the people vote because most people feel as if they will be, quote, wasting their vote if they vote for a third-party candidate. Or they'll vote for a third-party candidate unless it's close. And then they fear that, the party that they hate the most may win, and so they will throw their support and their vote behind that other party. In fact, there was an article yesterday or the day before about how a number of what we would call third-party voters were deciding to vote with the Liberal Party in Canada because they were afraid of the Conservative Party winning, and so they abandoned those principles and put their vote where they felt that it would have a greater impact. I would also, just from a civics perspective here, encourage people, and I don't know that there's a best way to do it, but people who think that I shouldn't say all of the problems, but having a two-party system is a tremendously significant part of the problem. Just observe how it works in other countries in which there are numerous parties. And ask yourself if you feel that really is a better way of doing it. And you may feel that it is. I don't find that I think is arguably more confusing. And I don't know that anyone could point to countries in which you have these coalitions that end up being created out of necessity to have a majority of votes when it comes to parliament and voting. I don't know that there's really any sort of results-based example in which one can say, see, that works much better. I'm not saying it's worse, but I don't know. To me, you know what it is to me? 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
No.
That is... That's triggering when I say that for Sarah. Sarah hates it when I say that because she says it's too long. It takes too long to say.
My father-in-law said that on Sunday, and I stopped him halfway through. I said, you cannot say that in this house.
Yeah. Now, you can say the F word or this or that, but don't say 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
It takes too long.
Yeah, it's one of those phrases. You don't know what it means. It means that it's the same either which way. I mean, you can call it six or half a dozen. It may have a different name, but ultimately it's the same. So
It's
that's
too long to get the
okay.
point across.
Well, I guess if you have to explain it, then it definitely
No,
is.
I understand what it
No,
means.
I know, but
Continue on with your
so
story.
six and one, half a dozen the
Stop
other.
it.
All right, now according to this is from well, let me get this here. CBC News. This is the Canadian news outlet. They are projecting that the Liberals, led by Mark Carney, who is a banker that flew in from England. He's been living in England for like a decade or so. Flew in from England a few months ago to become he's big national banker, big bank guy, in order to replace Trudeau as the Liberal Party leader. And that, again, is a weird concept, I would argue, to Americans, that this idea that if out of the blue, let's say when it became clear that they were going to dump Joe Biden overboard, if there was some banker out of the UK that the Democrat Party's like, oh, this is going to be the new guy now. Now, our Constitution, of course, would not allow that unless the person was, natural U.S.-born citizen, 35 years old, and all of that. But all right, let's just say that is the case to make it more of a parallel. That I just don't. Now, the Democrats probably would have done it. I mean, the Democrats, they've just, whatever the party tells them to do, they have demonstrated they will do. So I suppose that is something that could happen here in the U.S. But given that it hasn't, it just seems like such a weird idea. But hey, it's what worked. Now, the CBC Decision Desk is projecting a fourth Liberal term, a rarity in Canadian politics, but at the time, like 4 o'clock this morning, they were still saying that it was too close to tell whether it would be a majority or a minority government. Now, because they have multiple parties that have a significant presence, significant enough to make this sort of difference, you can have a majority of seats but not be the majority party. The Liberal share of the vote hovers just above 43%. They're leading the projected elected in about 167 seats. In order to have a majority, you have to have 172 seats. And 167 as of 4 o'clock this morning is what the last count was, with the conservative vote standing at about 42%. So 42%. So you see, it's not really that massive of a difference, but because neither of the two parties had 172, but the Liberal Party has more than the Conservative Party, and what the expectation here is that the minority parties will become a coalition when it comes to voting, essentially what I guess we would call caucusing, and so that is what gives the Liberal Party the majority power, essentially. I genuinely feel bad for the Canadians. The argument here is that this is pretty ideal for Trump because Trump would much rather deal with somebody who is a leftist because they are generally much easier. That there's a lot of bark, no bite, and selfishly, if your goal is for the United States to have the upper hand, you're talking about people who are going to continue to run a country into the ground. It would be similar to you're a particular restaurant in town, and there's another restaurant, and you guys sort of share and compete against one another in certain capacities. You help each other in certain capacities as well. But when you find out that the competition, if you will, has hired a new manager that has the same belief system as the prior manager, that has diminished its popularity and the quality of the food and the cost of the food made it much higher, then you could look at it and go, well, that's good for us, because that's just, if it's compare and contrast, we're much better off. And so it's long been believed that, particularly when it comes to negotiating, Trump has felt that the United States is definitely going to have an upper hand over Carney as opposed to Polyev. just as a human being and a person who is results oriented, I had high hopes that Polyev would end up with the Conservative Party controlling Canada so that those people could get back on the right track. I mean, the amount of the cost for a mortgage there, everything has just gone through the roof in Canada. We think that under the Biden years we had it bad here. Canada just much, much, much worse. And so it certainly isn't a good day for the Canadians. Now, the thing that's remarkable about it is that the driving force behind apparently many of the voters who voted for the Liberal or their Liberal Party was a hatred for Donald Trump. Trump derangement syndrome. Trump derangement syndrome apparently is not a disorder that stops at the border. One of a story in the Canadian Broadcast Corporation, Trump knows exactly what he just triggered in Canada. In the piece, Carney vows to govern for all Canadians after winning election upended by Trump. That's the headline. That's a news story. Like, Trump is all over this election. And it's really pretty similar to the liberal mindset in this country, in which if you go around and you see these man on the street interviews, people that are protesting Trump, hate Trump, they'll support anybody who says Trump is Hitler, and you start asking them specifics about policies of the person they're supporting. They have no idea. No clue. Ask them specific reasons about, Trump is going, this, the horrible that. Like, well, okay, let's talk about some specifics. What specifically? Well, it's just in general. They don't know. Driven by fear and driven by hate. And obviously, the vast majority of you don't really follow Canadian politics, but it was always pretty interesting, I thought, to listen to Polyev, the leader of the Conservative Party. He would talk about ideas. He would talk about where Canada is now versus 10 years ago, talking about the policies that needed to be put in place in order to get the Canadian quality of life to increase, to get back to a point in which there was a middle class that was reasonable. And you could sit down with people like Jordan Peterson and have intellectual conversations, but then you listen to the Liberal Party, and it's just they're talking about Donald Trump in Canada. I mean, the left, the universal language of the left is fear and hatred. And we saw it here, though it wasn't enough to overcome the majority of Americans during the last election. In Canada, it apparently was enough to continue to give the people who have been driving Canada into the ground power to continue to do so. What a sad and unfortunate thing. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. A number of you noting that maybe we should open our borders to conservative Canadians and then facilitate what people on the left have been saying for years and years, threatening to flee when they don't get their way. They tend to not do it. I don't know. Other than a few white rich ones like Ellen DeGeneres and Rosie O'Donnell, they always talk about going to Canada, but then they end up going elsewhere. But do a swap, do a refugee
A
swap.
switcheroo, if you will.
Yeah, I'd be fully supportive. Why not? Um, particularly liberal. I get so tired of people on the left. I'm going to do this if I don't get my way, and then they don't do it. Just do it. Do it. Quit complaining and do it. And I don't say that because I don't want you here, but just tired of hearing you whine already. Just go. I mean, if that's what you want. Now, if you're somebody who's liberal and like, no, I want to stay here no matter what, that's fine. But I'm talking about those who constantly go on and on about how if so-and-so wins, I'm going to leave this country. So Rosie O'Donnell once again is obsessing over Trump. She did some other interview. I thought the point of leaving the country was to get away from this stuff. This is how obsessed people on the left get. Even when they're like, I'm going to move because I can't stand thinking about it. I can't stand being part of it any longer. It's just too toxic. They move over, Rosie O'Donnell, for example, to Ireland. And like every week I see where she's doing interviews trashing on Trump. She's still obsessing over it, even when she moves to the other side of the planet. That's a problem. You need to see a therapist, not a travel agent. Someone had referenced, I just thought this was an interesting little fact, talking about, open the northern border. Did you know? So the 49th parallel, when you look at a map, is sort of that line that if you were to draw a straight line that was, pretty much the border between Canada and the United States, that 70% of Canadians live below that. And it's because, obviously, when you look at it, particularly around the Great Lakes area, but not just there, around, New York and over Washington State as well, there are areas in which the U.S. goes up a little bit, and then, more importantly, where Canada drops down a little bit. And, for example, I think it's it's Detroit, I believe. If you drive south, you're in Canada. I think it's Detroit where that is. And so the vast majority of the Canadian population is down close to the border, but even below that line. So you've got a very significant, a massively significant number of Canadians that if they go north, then they actually end up going into the United States. I just thought this little, I didn't know
That's
that.
interesting.
I didn't know that until recently. I don't even know why I came across that, but I did nonetheless. Traffic update. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see showers and thunderstorms throughout the day with a high around 68. Tonight, rain will continue on with a low around 59. For your Wednesday, more rain with a high near 74. And on Thursday, even more rain with a high near 72.
That article I was reading about the 70% of Canadians living below that 49th parallel, which is what if you were to draw essentially a straight line between the border of Canada and the U.S., 70% of Canadians live below it, and sort of these weird areas that U.S. citizens or Canadians find themselves in when it comes to the border. And the article cited I think it was just a town in particular, and I want to say it was maybe New York. It was somewhere on that side of the country where in the town, one side of the street is the U.S. and then across the street, I'm not talking about a highway, I'm not talking about like some major interstate, but just it's a neighborhood, and the other side of the street is Canada.
Isn't that crazy?
That would be so. I mean, I guess they're used to it. I mean, obviously that's just how they live. But I just walk across the street, and how does that work when it comes to border security? That's the thing I wonder. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good
we
point.
have so much about border and going through customs and everything. Well, what if you get in that neighborhood and you just I don't know the logistics of how that works. The article that I read didn't reference or talk about that. It mentioned that, and it showed a map where the street took this sort of janky turn, and because of that, the border went literally through a house, through somebody's property. So one part of their house was in the U.S., and the other part of it was in Canada. Pyramid Roofing Company talk a text line. Did you see Rosie O'Donnell where she said that her kid, who was 2 years old, was non-binary? How does a 2-year-old know anything at that age? They don't, not when it comes to that. This is projection. This is one of the sick things about this whole movement, if you will, and that is the projection, or you have these parents that want to almost live through their child, or they want to feel special, and they see all of it's almost like a Munchausen, where the Munchausen by proxy, in which you have a parent, usually it's a mother, that will deliberately make their child sick because it gives them all sorts of attention. So they will do harm to their child in order to get attention, because they crave that attention. They need that attention. And I believe that when you have these parents that take young children and label that, claim, oh, they're non-binary or they're transgender, that's a form of Munchausen by proxy. You have parents that are doing harm psychologically and oftentimes physical harm through these surgeries to the hormone injections to their own children because it gives them the attention. It fills that same thing for them that it fills in a mother who constantly gives their 2-year-old a little bit of something poisonous, so that 2-year-old ends up in the hospital and they get all of this attention and compassion and sympathy. I don't see any difference. To me, it's the same. I want to mention one other thing back to the Canadian elections. And the fact that at one point, the Conservatives were expected to easily take it. And that was when Trudeau was in power. And Trudeau, much like Joe Biden, and his party saw the writing on the wall. So now they didn't have to undo an election like the Democrats did. There was no overthrowing of the election in Canada. They were just like, Trudeau, you need to step down. And he stepped down as party leadership. Then they imported this banker who had been in the UK for a decade or whatever. And they're like, hey, liberals, this is the new person you're going to support. And like good liberals in the United States, they just complied and celebrated, much like they did with Kamala Harris. And all of a sudden, after about a week or two, there was a real change in attitude, and what was expected to be a massive conservative win switched around. And of course, we see the results. Though conservatives did very well, but it wasn't enough to overtake. And it was largely a Trump. This is being attributed to Trump because Trump came on the scene around the same time, and then there were tariff talks and so forth. And I think that did have a play in it because this is what the left does. They whip citizens into a frenzy over a boogeyman. I mean, Trump isn't even there. I mean, it's just insane. It would be like somebody running for president and then, I guess running against the Prime Minister of Canada. Out there campaigning against Mark Carney. You're like, what the hell are you doing? What? But that's how infectious Trump derangement syndrome is. But let me tell you what I think about when I see this and see that these liberal voters, or that voters that perhaps vote liberal most of the time, and then the polling showed that they were thinking about abandoning their party because of the utter failures of the Liberal Party and the results, but all of a sudden swung back. Now, while I think the usage of Trump, again, gave them, because they love to live off fear, an excuse to go back, I think this demonstrates something else. And it is that people on the left refuse, that they will, quote, fix their mistakes in a way that is essentially virtue signaling. They will admit they're wrong in a virtue signaling way. So they will replace the person that they feel or recognize, acknowledge is the reason for the problems, but they won't switch the reasons for it. They won't switch the ideology, because that means they have to admit that they're wrong in the way that they actually believe. Not the choice they made, but the way they believe. So if they can figure out any way whatsoever to support somebody of the same ideology, just replace the person, but same ideology, then they are able to pat themselves on the back and say, we threw the bums out. But they don't have to admit that they are making a mistake when it comes to the type of person they choose. And I firmly, when we watched the absolute sinful way that the left, the Democrat Party, handled the fires out in California. Just the atrocious and embarrassing lead up to it and fallout of it, how they dealt with it. And there were a lot of people that felt that this was going to be enough to push Democrats into voting for Republicans, that this was different than so many other Democrat policies that turned out to be a failure, because this was a direct and devastating impact. And that when that happens, it's different. And that was going to cause a lot of people to say, I'm done with this party. I never really bought into that. And I didn't buy into it because of the way that we see the left, quote, throw the bums out. Let's look at Chicago and Mayor Beetlejuice, for example. And she was extremely unpopular. And so they were mad. And by gosh, we're going to get rid of her. Well, what did they vote? Do they replace her with somebody that says, you know what, the approach is wrong here? It's not just Lori Lightfoot, that she's a bad manager of things. Her entire political ideology is wrong, and it leads to destruction. So you need to pick somebody from a different political ideology. Is that what the people of Chicago did? No. They voted for a carbon copy of her, ideologically speaking. And this is what they do. Anytime there is the unavoidable recognition by people on the left that the person that they have elected has just been an utter disaster, they will just simply throw that person out and replace that person with another one of them. And that way they can tell themselves, yeah, we really switch things around, without having to really switch things around. So in their minds, and I know for thinking people, this doesn't jive, but you have to understand people on the left, their brains work differently. They are able to tell themselves that they really are making a difference by making a change but they don't have to admit that they're actually making a change. They because they aren't. So they don't have to admit I'm wrong about my ideological belief. I'm wrong about my loyalties to the party. I can be wrong about the person. They did bad, but I didn't because I chose properly based off what I was given, and they get to stay consistent. And so it doesn't surprise me to see that people in Canada, at one point when Trudeau was running things into the ground and the other choice was the Conservative Party, and they're like, well, that's the only other choice we have. But then once they were given a different face in Mark Carney, but the same ideology, they just go right back to it again. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. It's always amusing when Democrats realize that they are on the losing end of a particular issue, particularly when it's an 80-20 issue, as many of these issues have become, where Democrats are in the extreme minority and do not represent the majority of Americans, oftentimes the majority of members in their own party. And it's amusing to watch how they react. Is it denial? Is it gaslighting? There is a piece that the news leader has, because it comes from USA Today, same owner. 49% of Americans don't want politicians focusing on trans issue, new poll finds. Now, this is a humorous approach. Clearly on the issue itself, even when it comes to children, a majority of Democrats are opposed to what the Democrat Party supports when it comes to transgenders and kids. Now, if you poll people, do you wish that this was an issue? Most people are going to say no, because it wasn't once upon a time. Democrats weren't this crazy once upon a time. There was no one thought that 8-year-olds should be getting sex change operations. No one thought that a boy who fails year after year in track should be able to then say, oh, I've decided to change my name to Julie, I'm now a girl, and then get to compete against girls and as a bonus take showers with them. No, this wasn't a thing. Democrats just up and decided some time ago, we're going to make this a thing. And so most people wish it weren't. But see, that's not the point of this poll, and that's not the point of the article. The point of it is to try and create this narrative for Republicans that people don't, you're talking about this is going to work against you. So you should stop talking about it. So the piece, and again, USA Today, so it's carried in the Springfield News Leader. More than half of Americans don't want politicians focusing on transgender issues, according to a new poll from a non-profit newsroom. The 19th News poll found that 49% of Americans don't think politicians should focus on transgender issues at all, up from 43% in 2024. And yeah, ideally, they shouldn't have to. But unfortunately, once again, because Democrats have forced this upon the American population, specifically targeting women and girls, it's kind of something that has to be dealt with. Since his swearing in, Donald Trump has sought to restrict the right of transgender Americans by asking the Supreme Court to ban trans people from serving in the military, restricting their access to gender-affirming passports, and looking to prohibit transgender athletes from participating in the sports that align with their gender. See, so this is the framework of it. This is only an issue because of Donald Trump. Not because girls are losing out on competitions, not because girls are getting raped in bathrooms by boys who use transgenderism as an excuse to be predators, not because of, kids being taken across state lines to get sex change operations. No. That's not why any of this has come up. Not because of schools indoctrinating kids and trying to offer up child pornography to elementary school students. That's not why this has become an issue. It's become an issue because of Donald Trump. Trump has worked this is the article, to scrub transgender history from government websites, including the removal of the word transgender from the National Park Service's website for the Stonewall National Monument in New York. Here's a deeper look at the poll. The 19th News poll asked respondents about whether they favored legislation that supports gender-affirming care for both adults and minors. The majority of respondents, 59%, said they favor the right of transgender adults to have access to gender-affirming care, per poll results obtained by USA Today. About 37% of respondents opposed this type of care for adults. Now, are we talking about guaranteed care or, hey, if you want to pay to have somebody chop off any body part you want, go right ahead, because I support that. I don't care what you do. Do what you want. Gender-affirming care encompassed a range of health care, including testosterone and estrogen therapy for those seeking to transition. More respondents, however, showed less support for transgender people under the age of 18 to have access to gender-affirming care. Notice they can't even bring themselves to use the words oppose. This is the level of denial and manipulation that you get. Instead of just straight up saying, a majority of people are against kids being allowed to have sex change operations, they say, well, they showed less support for it. It just wasn't quite as much. Let's not misinterpret that. 57% opposed, while 43% supported this type of care for minors, the poll results show. This was SurveyMonkey. It was an online survey platform anyhow, so of course it isn't in any way, shape, or form, at least demonstrated here, to be scientific, but that's not the point, is it? So once again, you have via, the news leader, USA Today, putting out a poll that, according to the way they present it, isn't scientific and doesn't mean anything whatsoever. They use language that clearly is meant in order to sway people one way or another, try to make it seem like this is only an issue because of Donald Trump and the entire, theme of it. And this is, again, because they're losing on this issue. Trying to create an environment in which Republicans feel like, oh my, did you see that? People don't like us talking about this, so I guess we just better stop. I guess we just better give up on supporting where 80% of Americans stand on this issue consistently, what has arguably, at least in some capacity, won us the last presidential election, because USA Today says that people in their poll, they don't really like us talking about it so much. Okay. Sad thing is, there'll be some Republicans that will fall for this sort of thing. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Someone texted in on the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line, what is it about, quote, liberalism, progressivism that's so attractive to some people? Listen, it's the same thing that draws people into most scams, frankly. It is the promise of wonderful things without having to do much at all. It's the promise of winning the lottery. It's the, hey, just give me a little bit of this and I'll make all of your dreams come true. Snake oil salesman, for example. It's just that instinct a lot of people have to do very little and to get a lot of blessings in return. And that's what liberalism is. It doesn't work, but that's not what it's about. It's the promise of wonderful things. Springfield Stock 1041. Hello, good morning. My name is Nick Reed. If you want a good home loan, there's plenty of places to go. You want a mediocre one, milquetoast, subpar. But if you want a great home loan, there's one place to go, and that's iwantagreathomeloan.com. Whether that is for refinancing purposes, maybe it's your first home loan, maybe you've gotten home loans. This is something you're familiar with. You've done it before. Investment properties, you always go through the same place, your same big bank, whatever it may be, online, you name it, you do it. I recommend this time around that you get at least a second look at it and see what it is that the characters in the team can do for you at iwantagreathomeloan.com. And maybe you'll find that, hey, you're perfectly great the way you've been doing it. It's the way you prefer to do it. Maybe you'll find it's a toss-up, or you may find that they can actually get something better for you. Doesn't hurt to find out. Doesn't cost anything to find out. It's at iwantagreathomeloan.com because you do. Someone had called in and asked what's taking so long when it comes to the budget. We talked with Congressman Burleson yesterday on this, and I would recommend that if you didn't hear it, you go back and listen to it. It's in the podcast section at KSGF.com, and you can, of course, subscribe also at Spotify and iTunes. And while he doesn't go into a great amount of detail, ultimately, what we're dealing with is the problem that the Republican Party has long dealt with, and that is there is a significant presence there, arguably the people in charge, who really are not truly about the sort of meaningful changes in terms of cutting wasteful spending and inefficiencies that they pretend that, they're about. They're not that into it. They are tax and spenders. They run as Republicans because the district that they're in, or because they're semi-pro-life and they go hunting, and so they think that makes them Republican, even though they are for increased spending every budget and increased taxes. They're fine with that. Increased size of government. The Republican Party for some time has been controlled by people who do not believe in less government. They don't see the role of government in relation to the people any different than Democrats do. They just think that they know how better to run it. It's management. They just believe that they're a better manager of those things. And so really you end up with not any tremendous amount of difference in outcome. Now, in certain areas you will when it comes to management, but the ideological belief that, hey, government isn't the answer, so we should have less of it. Taxes, more spending isn't the answer, so we should have less of it. That isn't something that they subscribe to. And so that's why these particular situations drag out. Now, with the left, you generally don't have these problems. You don't have, the Democrats quibbling over, okay, we want to raise taxes, and some are like, no, we don't want to raise taxes. That's not how they work. It's, okay, how much can we do it? How much can we get out of the people? Or we want to create some new government program. You don't have a segment of the Democrat population in terms of elected officials saying, you know what, maybe we don't need even more government. It's about how big can we make it? How expansive can we make it? And it's part of the reason why we constantly move to the left in this country. It's why, even though in my lifetime Republicans have been in charge of everything a number of different times, yet government didn't get smaller. Spending didn't get less in any meaningful way. And I think that should tell us all something. Now, there are those, and I would argue Congressman Burleson is one of those individuals, and he's demonstrated that they do really truly believe and that work in a way that reflects what it is that they promised they would do if they got elected, and that is for smaller government, lower taxes, less spending. And they're a little more bullish this time around, and I think that they have a little more pull this time around because of the resounding message that voters sent with the election of Donald Trump. But also they recognize, and I agree with this, if it doesn't get done now, with Donald Trump as president these first 2 years of his second term, it isn't going to get done. I mean, I just really... It can get redundant and sky is falling a bit to say that, well, if it doesn't happen this time, it never will. And it seems as if every election is the most important election of our lifetime, and at some point it becomes background noise. But just logistically speaking, given the overwhelming mandate that Trump got, and that Republicans control the House, they control the Senate, they control the White House, and the mood of the country, and having Trump in the White House, who is willing to, quote, swing for the fences and do bold things, if in this environment the Republican Party does not make meaningful changes when it comes to how this government is operating in terms of, just even the financial aspect of things, I don't foresee or recognize how there could possibly be any circumstances in which they would. So I really, truly believe that this is it. I'm not saying the country is going to come to a halt completely if it doesn't happen, but if it's, it's going to be a bad thing if it doesn't. We're going to continue the loss of quality of life in this country, and we are going to have some very, very, very bad fiscal and societal outcomes because of it. But I am truly a believer that if it does not happen, particularly in this first 2 years, and if Republicans keep control or maybe even expand control of Congress in the midterm elections, then arguably there's another 2 years, but you are talking about a lame duck situation. So these first 2 years, I just don't know that it would happen. And I think people like Congressman Burleson, they also recognize that this is it. I mean, this is the last shot at it. So they are willing to, I shouldn't say willing to, they just recognize that they've got to fight. And that if we're not in the moment of, well, let's I tell you what, let's make a deal now, and then next time around we'll go ahead and do it your way, because there is no next time around. Springfield's Talk 104.1 traffic, weather also in a moment. Right now, the latest news update.
And your first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see showers and thunderstorms throughout the day with a high near 68. That rain will continue through the night with a low around 59. For your Wednesday, more rain with a high near 74. And looking ahead to Thursday, once again, more rain with a high near 72.
Coming up 5 to 7 this afternoon, Pinnaker Honda grand opening. Get your first 3 months of fuel free for every new vehicle. And the brand new showroom floor, it's being unveiled. Of course, this isn't a brand new facility. I mean, the location itself isn't new. It is something the Pinnaker family bought from a previous family some time ago, but some of that infrastructure was something that they said we should really update this, make it all new. And that's what this grand opening is. And they're going to have food trucks there, and all the food from the food trucks is covered for you. And you're heading home, and what am I going to do for dinner? Might as well stop by. I know I'm going to be there sometime between 5 and 7, probably more likely 5 to 6 or so. The girl child has an event tonight that I'm going to be going to. So, but I will be there for part of it. If you do happen to come out and you see me, I'd love for you to say hey. And you can get yourself, again, food from food trucks while you're out there. Pinnaker Honda on South Campbell, just south of Walnut Lawn. I want to talk about this story Michael Landis had earlier. City of Springfield announces initiative to reduce pedestrian and driver crashes. And I'll read to you the story from ozarksfirst.com. The City of Springfield introduced a public safety initiative called Help Without the Hazard on Monday, aiming to reduce safety risks for pedestrians and drivers in high-traffic areas. The initiative is a collaboration between the city, Springfield Police, and local service providers. They are using the effort to promote pedestrian safety and find safer alternatives in order to reduce serious accidents involving drivers assisting pedestrians near the roadway. Am I wrong, but is this just a nice way of saying panhandlers?
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
that's what this is the people that are giving panhandlers money. And because of that, it isn't the giving them the money necessarily that is the problem, but it's like when you feed animals, animals come. And so they're saying, well, these people are getting evidently hit by cars, and that's because they're there, and they're there because people are giving them money. And so, it's this idea of, well, okay, let's get to the root of the problem here. Chad Zickfus, public works traffic engineer, said, quote, standing or walking near moving traffic, especially outside of designated crosswalks, puts pedestrians and drivers at serious risk. When drivers stop unexpectedly or interact with individuals in the roadway, it creates distractions, disrupts traffic flow, and increases the risk of crashes. The Help Without the Hazard campaign promotes compassion in a way that doesn't cause safety issues. I have a print off, but I have a digital. I did this deliberately because sometimes the print off doesn't carry everything over. Help Without Hazard campaign promotes compassion in a way that doesn't compromise safety or mobility on our streets. The city says the initiative helps those in need more safely by connecting them with needed resources and drivers to community-based organizations that will assist those in need long-term. Local residents are encouraged to support groups that are helping individuals with food, shelter, and employment assistance. You can support these local resources and learn more about Help Without Hazard here. Now, all right. There's nothing wrong at all trying to help people. But there is also, and this is what oftentimes happens, people that just want to help people, they just do something. They do something without thinking whether or not it's actually going to work. We've been through this before in the city of Springfield. This attempt by the city to, well, if we just connect these people up with the resources that are available to them, then this is going to solve the problem. It doesn't solve the problem because the problem is most of these people either already utilize those resources or they don't have any interest in using those resources.
That reminds me of when the city did that transportation.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay,
yes.
good.
Yes, yeah, right.
Yeah, so there was that transportation. The city put up these signs that said, call this number and we'll take you to the job center. And then it came out, well, nobody was really utilizing that.
Well, of course not, because they don't want to. I mean, that's the thing. This is, you get people that are in these positions of, and again, I think that oftentimes you have well-meaning people, and it's across the spectrum. Sometimes you have people and they just have access to power and people's money, and so they're like, oh, well, let's just try this, and let's try this, and if it doesn't work, so what? But the cause itself, like we ultimately, this is about people not getting run over by cars, I guess, and it is the panhandlers, which they refuse to call panhandlers. And it's not just them, but I would argue the source of the problem isn't the panhandlers. It's the people that are handing out money. Because if you're not handing out money, then the panhandlers aren't there. So while we do look in frustration and aggravation at the panhandlers themselves, it's like a cat that, that stray cat walking through your neighborhood. You put out food once and they're going to keep coming back, and you don't get aggravated at the cat because the cat's coming because you're feeding the cat. And so that's the way I look at it. But to the that time that Sarah was pointing out, and I forget how many years, but it was this exact same thing. It's just a different approach. And the city decided, well, what we'll do is we'll have a nice air-conditioned bus. And we will offer, I remember, like bottled water and, like some little goodies, little snack packs, if I remember. And then we'll take these people to these different organizations that offer services and opportunities for long-term fixes to their problems. And this is the difference between people who live and when they have power, they think of the way things should turn out. So in their minds, all of these people don't want to be where they are. They have no choice whatsoever. The situation they're in only because there's absolutely no other opportunity for them. So we're going to create that opportunity, and they're all going to take us up on it, and they're all going to be so grateful and happy, and this is going to solve the problem. Well, that's just not reality. I mean, one, it's just understanding human nature. Two, if you actually talk to these people, there is this refusal to engage with these individuals and talk with these people, and to understand what their motivation is, what they're actually thinking. For the most part, these are individuals that don't want badly enough to change their lifestyles to live a different lifestyle. Now, it's easy to say they don't want a different life, right? That this is the way that they want to live. And I'm sure many of them are like, well, if I had a preference, I wouldn't. But it's a matter of making tough decisions and being willing enough to change your ways in order to better yourself. And the fact of the matter is the most majority of people who decide to, as panhandlers, sit out at some intersection in Springfield and ask people for cash, if they do wish that they had a, quote, better life, they don't want it badly enough in order to change the way that they behave. And so simply giving them an opportunity to have resources that are already there, already available, is not going to change things. It's just not going to do it. How many different times do we have to do this? You look at areas like Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles. The story is always consistent when it comes to panhandlers or the homeless. The more money they spend, do you know what that does? It does the exact same thing that honey does. It draws bees. It draws, when you put out wet sugar, it draws ants. When you put out food, it draws animals. I mean, and this is consistently the result. The more money that you have government put up for people that are panhandlers or homeless, the more of them you get. Do you know why? Because they come to the area, because you're making it more comfortable and profitable for them to live this way. I'm not saying that this isn't somehow noble, but this is not going to change things. This isn't going to suddenly make any of these people up and change the way that they live out their lives. And by the way, that also works for people who are handing out money to the panhandlers. I don't even know how they're going to push this, but this idea that if you somehow inform people, oh, you can donate money to this cause over here, and then, that is an alternative to handing money to somebody outside the window of your car. That is not going to change that behavior either, largely because that behavior is driven by guilt, people that feel sad. and they are sitting there at an intersection and they see somebody with a dog and a sign that says something about, oh, all I want is a job, knowing that most people aren't going to be able to offer them a job, but they'll think, well, this person, they're not just looking for money, they're looking for a job, or they're a veteran, or this happened or that happened, and they feel bad. They feel sadness, and in order to make themselves feel better, they will give them, money, somehow informing them that they can donate instead to some sort of organization is not going to change how they emotionally feel in that instance and their behavior in order to make themselves feel better and feel less, sad for that individual. It's just not going to change it. This is another one of those things that it's not going to work. I mean, go ahead, try it, do it, especially if it doesn't cost any money, though I'm sure it does. Taxpayer dollars. I mean, cost, people want to donate all their own private money they want to. That's absolutely fine. But if there is some belief that this is somehow going to alter the way that people who pay panhandlers money or give handlers money or alter the behavior of the panhandlers themselves, based off of history and human nature, I would argue that that is not going to change in any meaningful way whatsoever. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. Remember the giving meters on the square? I do. Do you remember that?
I don't think
That was
so.
before the Wheels to Work.
Yes, that's what that program was called that I was talking about the last segment, and it was so difficult to find information about
Yeah.
it. It was
Yeah,
a
that,
2 month.
that I mean, I knew that wouldn't
Oh
last.
no, I remember us
It,
talking about it then.
it actually went away a little more quickly than I
Yes.
thought it was because people in government just refuse. When something in government doesn't work, usually the answer is, well, let's do more of it. And so the fact that that went away as quickly as it did, it did surprise me a bit. No, the giving meters, this may have been, I don't know, 12 years ago. And, there's down, particularly around the square, um, a lot of homeless. I think a lot of homeless youth in particular. 'Cause wasn't it downtown there was housing for homeless youth down there or nearby, and so obviously homeless youth, if they have a place to stay, they are going to generally hang out in the general area within walking distance, and so I think that may have been part of the situation on there. But point being is that there was an issue with people just sort of hanging out and asking people for money, sort of panhandling. But you have a lot of people come in and out of stores and so forth, and restaurants and bars. And so they came up with this idea of giving meters, and they were like parking meters, but instead you put money in that you would otherwise give to somebody asking for change, and then it would somehow be distributed to those people asking for change. And the idea was, well, if the panhandlers knew that they didn't have to ask for the money, that they would just get it through these means, then they would just give up their life of panhandling. I don't know whatever happened to the giving meters. I haven't seen them for
That
a very long
happened
time.
back in 2013.
Okay. So yeah, so what I said 12 years ago. So I was pretty on the mark there, right?
Yeah, I said there was 9 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if they're still down there or not.
I
I
don't
never go
know either.
downtown.
But the idea that someone had even texted in, they'll double dip. This is regarding just any sort of an initiative. They'll double dip, take the donation from the city, and then still hit the corners. And that's true. And that was what I had believed would be the outcome at the time. That even if you had these giving meters, that they would just be like, oh, it's just more money. I mean, there's one part of this though, because ultimately, this initiative is to lose. I mean, the forest for the trees here. It is to reduce or eliminate pedestrian vehicle fatalities, because when you have the combination of people distracted because they are giving out money to people at intersections, and the people walking out into traffic to get money, that increases the likelihood that you're going to have an accident or somebody hit and killed by a vehicle, right? So that's really what this gets down to. There's a part of that I think is just golden that I'll share with you coming up next. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line is 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see showers and thunderstorms throughout the day with a high near 68. Rain will continue through the night with a low around 59. For your Wednesday, more rain with a high near 74. And looking ahead to Thursday, we'll see even more rain with a high near 72.
This Ozarks First had this story about this new initiative by the city, and it is called Help Without the Hazard, and it is attempting to eliminate a couple of problems that are connected. One, pedestrians getting hit by vehicles and killed, oftentimes, if not injured. And that is oftentimes the result of panhandlers that stand at busy intersections and then people in vehicles who refuse to stop drawing them to those intersections by giving them money. And so this initiative, which I believe is not going to have any impact whatsoever, is to, and I don't even know how they're planning on marketing this, but there's a website the city has that's Help Without the Hazard, and it is pointing people to alternative places to give money instead of handing it out to panhandlers at an intersection. Now, I don't think that's going to work. I don't think there's a single person who is susceptible to feeling sad and trying to make that sadness go away when they see somebody asking for money, and then so they seek to make their sadness go away by handing them money. I don't think that behavior is going to change because they're told, don't you know that there's some charitable organization you can give that money to instead? And because that behavior is not going to change, it isn't going to change the fact that panhandlers are coming there because that's where the money is. And so then that isn't going to change the fact that you have pedestrians around busy intersections that, of course, then oftentimes result in people getting hit by cars. So that out of the way. Here is what the city's site reads. The Springfield community is a generous one, with locals often feeling driven to help those in urgent need. This passion for giving is most visible along Springfield's busiest roadways, where a quick couple of bills or gift card handed out of a window is a regular sight. However, while giving in this way is convenient and well-intended, it can put both drivers and recipients at risk. On average, of 70 pedestrians are struck on Springfield streets each year, a number that the city of Springfield has taken strides to reduce. In 2017, so this was 8 years ago, the city launched the SGF Yields Pedestrian Safety Campaign to increase awareness and safety for both drivers and pedestrians. Evidently, that didn't work because in 2024, the city council approved Springfield's Vision Zero plan, which commits to eliminating all traffic deaths in Springfield. Now, so that was implemented in 2024, all right? So that was sometime last year. I don't even know what time last year. So we are in, what are we in, April? We're about to be in May of 2025. When do you think their target goal is to achieve this?
I don't know.
For the elimination of traffic deaths. It's May. We're in May right now.
I would assume, maybe a year or two.
2050.
Oh, that sounds right.
I did laugh out loud when I saw 2050. I mean, I'm sorry. Now, I understand that any plan, as well thought out as it may be, isn't going to turn things around in a week or a month or, I mean, but 25 years? I'm sorry, if in 25 years, it might as well be 1,000 years. I'm wondering, was somebody like, how about 10 years? Oh, no. That's too soon. Like, you can't, 25 years? How do you come up with that number? 25 years. What is also funny is, so that was part of the Vision Zero plan, and there's a hyperlink on the website, right? So like, oh, okay, well, let's check out
let's read about
the
it.
Vision Zero plan. We're sorry, but this is not a web page matching your entries. So here's a tip. You're probably not even going to hit that mark in 2050 if the website goes to a dead link. government, Springfield government. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. The best way to reduce panhandling in Springfield would be to start an advertisement campaign showing how Nixon, Willard, or surrounding towns have started programs to support and take care of panhandlers. Now, I don't know um, what those programs are necessarily. Now, you've got a whole different scenario as well. Republic, for example, they're trying to think of the number of intersections that would even be conducive to panhandling. Obviously, not in a safe way because none of it really is fully safe, but just in a way that would bring in revenue. I mean, you've got, I suppose, well, the infrastructure's there at 60 and 174. That's where the Walmart is because you've got sort of those areas where you can stand. Where the Andes and Wendy's is, that I don't think that there's any real area to stand to do any panhandling. So in Republic, you're talking about maybe one or two different intersections. I can't speak to Nixa because I live in Republic. Obviously, I'm in Nixa some, but not nearly as familiar with it. So, the area itself, just the infrastructure makes Springfield the real challenge. You have all these major intersections. I mean, they're all over the place. A lot of them coming in off of the interstate or James River or the highway. And so, that's where it is that this big draw is. And so I get it. I mean, it's not an easy thing. I sit here and we kind of poke fun a little bit and laugh and point out all of these different remedies that obviously aren't going to work. I'm not saying that it's an easy problem to fix, but it seems to me, and this is what happens so often in government in particular, it's this willingness to do things that if you think them through just aren't going to work. But, I mean, again, that's government. And when your job isn't tied to results, it's kind of easy to not worry about whether it'll work or not. It's a whole lot different if you're given a project and you're like, hey, just so you know, your bonuses attached to this, or hey, you're on a probationary period and we want to see if you're able to tackle this particular problem, come up with a meaningful solution that you can implement, and see if we see meaningful results. And if you do that, then you will have a permanent job here. That's not what happens in government. It's just like, oh, well, it didn't work, I guess we'll try something different, different variation of it. I don't know what I would do. I mean, I suppose you could try to I think, again, the source of the problem are the people giving the money. I understand that the panhandlers are just going where the money is. That's what they're doing. And so it's the money. So what do you do to those people? Do you ticket them? Do you fine them? I mean, now, aside from liberties and you're right. I mean, someone going to argue, hey, if I want to hand out money at an intersection, I should be able to. But just looking at the logistics of it, I mean, I suppose you could put up, instead of traffic cameras that capture, if you're going to outlaw for safety purposes, handing money out at intersections to people. I guess you could put up cameras, and if somebody does it, you could fine them in a way that is meaningful enough that it will deter most people from participating in that activity, and have signage indicating that it is illegal to hand out money or gift cards or food to people at the intersection. You are being monitored. You will be fined. Again, I'm not arguing that is what should be done or that's legal, but that's the sort of thing that I think if you did it, it would actually dry up the source of the problem, and that is the money. Infrastructurally, I suppose you could try to figure out, is there a way that you can create physically these intersections in a way that are not conducive to people standing and panhandling. I don't know that that's possible. The only way to really do it, I would imagine, is to have it impossible for a pedestrian to, be in that area. But you do have people that legitimately need to cross the road. And how can you have an area that makes it impossible to stand, but is still welcoming for people to walk when they need to? And I don't know that that's possible. Plus, if you have it set up in certain ways, you sort of deter people from crossing the street because of panhandlers there. And so when it comes to the infrastructure angle, I don't know. Like I said, I know that it's not necessarily the easiest problem. At one point, the city did announce, because this is what a lot of it is that they're facing, just going background on it, is that you had a court, I think it was in St. Louis, that at one point ruled that panhandling is like freedom of speech or something. And so you can't pass a law telling people they can't panhandle. So what the city of Springfield eventually did was ban it without saying that they were banning it. What they did is they said, all right, it is illegal to loiter or to stand at an intersection, and there were certain parameters that were set up that it was designed to prevent panhandling without it being the action of panhandling, but outlawing the ability to stand where it would be needed in order to panhandle. And then it didn't apply to the activity of panhandling. It was just anybody and everybody can't just stand at those particular intersections. Of course, it exempted, certain charitable and government people, as most laws oftentimes do. And it, at one point it appeared as if that was going to be working. In fact, there was an influx of panhandlers in the Joplin area after that, because many of the panhandlers thought, okay, they're going to crack down here in Springfield. It is going to be more difficult to get revenue, so we'll just go to the next city, and that would be Joplin. And so that's where they went for a period of time. But it became clear to the panhandling community at some point that the city of Springfield's approach was either ineffective, or they just weren't really willing to put the effort into making it meaningful. And I don't know which one it was, but eventually that approach seemed to fade away as well, which is why that problem still exists. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. You see people on the streets begging for money for food, but you notice they always find money to get their cigarettes and their alcohol. I will say that there had become this unintentional annual tradition of talking about panhandlers in Springfield when spring came about, because that's when the weather was more inviting for the behavior. And every year that I would talk about this, and we would get all sorts of calls on. Of course, people text now, but it was before we had the text line. And I cannot tell you how many of the calls were from people who worked with organizations that offered services to these people. And now you would think, right, they would say, oh, those people, they need help, and any help they can get would be great. I don't think I ever had anyone that worked with or ran any of those organizations in the area that said that. They all, every year, said, do not give them money. There are more than enough resources when it comes to food, when it comes to the necessities in life available to these individuals. These individuals are using it for drugs, alcohol. They're using it for those things. And I'm telling you, every single time. I remember one year there was a gal who called up she had once upon a time been a panhandler herself. Now, of course, you could argue, how do you really know she was? And I just, at the time, she was, I don't know, I didn't question her too much. She seemed pretty legitimate, and just in the way that, she talked about it and the services that were out there. And she argued that because that was a time in her life that was the lifestyle she chose, and she wasn't willing to put the effort into changing it. And that's what, she would go get the legitimate services. She would take advantage of the goods and services that were offered by charitable organizations and, government. And then she would go panhandle and just get crazy amounts of money that would go to drugs and alcohol. Or one of the, I forgot what vice it was in particular. And so she's like, listen, as a former homeless person, I'm telling you, if you think you're doing good and you are handing cash to people outside of, your window at an intersection, you are buying them drugs. You are buying them alcohol. That's what you are doing. And I know that oftentimes people say, well, how do we really know that's the case? And her argument, the argument from over the years, people that worked with these different charitable organizations, was that because they don't have to do that. There are plenty of resources in the area for those people. There's only one reason to do it that way, and that is to have cash to buy things that you aren't going to be getting from the different organizations that are there meant to help the homeless and the needy. But it just makes people feel better. Sitting there and, oh, boy, that person looks so sad. I just feel awful about it. Well, here's $10. Oh, look how generous. Oh, I gave them $50. I'm so generous. They'll be able to feed their whole family with that, wherever that family is. Okay. Coming up Friday, we have our happy hour. It is at Retro Metro. Cam of the travel group is going to be there. She is the one who, of course, is in charge of our Great Escapes. Mark, her husband, those of you who have been on Great Escape trips with Mark, a chance to hang out with him. Cam said that he is going to be there with us at Happy Hour at Retro Metro on Friday, as is she. So if you have gotten yourself signed up for the trip, then it's just fun to get together. I know there aren't necessarily any questions to ask at this point, particularly if you have gone on these trips, but it's fun to get together. We're already working on some of the swag, the mugs, and Cam yesterday, she said, now, Sarah said that you guys like the retro one, but I don't know which one that is. So I said, well, I think it's this one with the sun on it, though.
Yes, like that.
Yeah, that was the one that I liked as well. And so I think we're going to go with the same style that we did last time around, which I really, really liked a lot. We always had been so adamant about, well, I had the Bubba mugs because people loved them, and then we switched to this other kind, and they kept their cold long. They're easier to carry around, and everyone's had their name on them, which really makes so much sense when you have 8 people sitting around all on the Great Escape and they have the exact same looking drink mug
Right.
things
Yeah.
and having your name on it. In fact, I know I told this story. It was when I was buying you coffee at the gift shop at the last resort and at the pay terminal. There was somebody's Great Escape um, travel. It's not a mug. What's a
Like
y-
a
yeah,
tumbler.
like a tumbler. Maybe it was tumbler, and I turned it around, and there his name was on the back of it. It's like, well, I know exactly who this belongs to. So it just, it works out great. When I talked with her yesterday, we were down to 10 couples. There's room for 10 couples with what we have set aside and reserved at this point. And we were down to 20 when I talked to her the week prior, and this is a pretty good clip. Things are moving, and I would recommend that you do not wait any longer than you have to reserve that slot. You don't have to pay all up front. You can get in for it's around 2,000 for a jungle garden view. I think it's under 2,000. I think it's right around 2,000 for ocean view. That covers per person. That covers your junior suite. That covers room service. That covers food. That covers alcohol. That covers your airfare. That covers everything. I mean, even tipping. We always like to take a little extra cash, but when you walk into a restaurant, you don't take your wallet because it's all covered. So when you leave, I mean, it's just such an incredible time, and I always love it whenever there are people who haven't been with us before because it's just I don't know. Everyone is it's such a great time, and it's an experience that I know you'll be glad you've gone to. Details at ksgf.com for the Great Escape. Springfield's Talk 1041. Hey, everyone. My name is Nick Reed. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty, says, Kayla, working with Emily was an absolute pleasure from start to finish. We had the opportunity to both buy and sell properties with House Theory help. It's the only way I would do both at the same time. And each experience exceeded our expectation. Their deep knowledge of the market, strategic insights, and keen eye for value truly made a difference every step of the way. Beyond their expertise, they were a genuine delight to work with, professionals, responsive, and always looking out for our best interests. That's what you get with Emily Johnson. Another here, we recently had the pleasure of working with Emily, top-notch realtor here in Springfield, Missouri. We could not have asked for a better experience. Emily's expertise, professionalism, unwavering dedication truly set her apart. She listened closely to our needs. She was patient with us during our extended home search, provided invaluable insights into Springfield, Nixa, Ozark, Stratford, Willard, Republic real estate markets, helping us make informed decisions every step of the way. She even helped us coordinate renovations, connecting us with excellent local contractors and making sure our new home was exactly how we envisioned it. Her strong negotiating skills saved us significant money, making the process seamless from beginning to end. We highly recommend Emily Johnson to anyone needing an exceptional realtor in Springfield. Notice how detailed those are. You know, a lot of times you'll see reviews like 5 stars, was great, 5 stars, would recommend, and that's it. It's just sort of these very generic, like, well, that doesn't tell me anything. Give me the reasons why. How do I know you're not just making this up? But with Emily Johnson, you get very specific experiences. So I recommend that you read through those. Reach out to any of those people on social media if you like. Ask them more detailed questions. And when it really comes down to it, buying or selling a home. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. NPR, a media outlet that, for whatever reason, feels that, as opposed to every other media outlet in the United States, they deserve taxpayer dollars, had fake news recently claiming that Doge workers were given accounts on classified networks with nuclear secrets. Oh. Well, as usual, it turns out not to be true, or, at the very least, it is misleading in a way that their listeners or their readers are going to walk away with a false impression as to what actually has occurred. NPR, citing 2 anonymous sources, well, that's shocking, told them that 2 Doge workers gained accounts on classified networks that had nuclear secrets. The networks are used by the National Security Administration and the Department of Energy. The government-funded outlet reported 2 members of Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency have been given accounts on classified networks that hold highly guarded details about America's nuclear weapons, 2 independent sources tell NPR. Now, of course, the previous administration allowed a coked-up drug addict that was also addicted to hookers have access to any and all highly classified intelligence information that he apparently wanted. Got to sit in on these meetings. It got to the point that even before the Democrats overthrew the Democrats' election of Joe Biden to be their nominee once again, there were people within the White House that were talking about the fact that it was really unusual that Hunter Biden was given access to such info. But, NPR further reported Luke Ferrito, a 23-year-old former SpaceX intern, and Adam Ramada, a Miami-based venture capitalist, have had accounts on the computer system for at least 2 weeks, according to sources, who also have access to the networks. Prior to their work at Doge, neither Ferrito nor Ramada appeared to have had experience with either nuclear weapons or handling classified information. Oh, so this is a new standard we're to concern ourselves with? Again, not to keep going back to the Hunter Biden well, but it is just so on point. What experience did he have in anything when he was allowed to sit in on cabinet meetings? What experience did he have when it comes to energy when his daddy got him that position on the Burisma board in Ukraine for the energy company? But again, that's different, see. The Department of Energy informed NPR that the reporting on the story is false, because that's pretty in line with the standards of NPR. Quote, this reporting is false. No Doge personnel have accessed these NNSA systems. The two Doge individuals in question worked within the agency for several days and departed DOE in February. Now, CNN reported a version of the story back in February, so this isn't any, this fake news is regurgitated. In February, CNN reported Ferreter was granted access to basic IT, including email and Microsoft 365. One of the people said, the chief information officer, does a small amount of IT and cybersecurity work for the National Nuclear Security Administration, they said, including providing connectivity and running basic internet services for NNSA's headquarters. It does not run IT systems for the nuclear agency's labs controlling the nation's nuclear stockpile. But why stop NPR from running it as fake news with false information, misleading people? Because this is, once again, all about creating this fake narrative that somehow there's this magical group of people. We don't know who they are, but they are allowed to have access to certain information. Anytime the media or people on the left try to frame, even if it's incorrectly, that these people, they have access to this information and that's wrong. All right, well, who has access to it that is right? Well, I mean, we don't really know. Yes, of course you don't know. Because it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether the people that, what is the difference here? Apparently, it isn't the president of the United States or the executive branch that is allowed to give people access to departments and information in the executive branch. It's just this magical grouping of people that we're not supposed to ask about, that we aren't allowed to know about, that we have no idea. They're never identified. We're never told, oh, well, you know the people that are allowed to have access because this is who they are, and this is what gives them the right to have access. None of that's ever identified. All you're supposed to know is the people that they point out that Trump, through Elon Musk, has working in these different divisions. Well, that's just wrong, see? That's how you know it's wrong, because it was Elon Musk or Trump. That's all you need to know. But, of course, in this case, the facts themselves, because we're talking about NPR, were incorrect anyhow. That would be called misinformation. Maybe if some of these fact checkers were around any longer that, we used to hear so much from, these outlets like NPR would not have such a difficult time discerning the truth from fake news. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I am Nick Reed. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see showers and thunderstorms throughout the day with a high around 68. That rain will continue throughout the night with a low around 59. For your Wednesday, more rain with a high near 74. And looking ahead to Thursday, we'll see even more rain with a high near 72.
Sarah Myers.
Thank you. The Pyramid Roofing Company, I spoke with Josh last week, and one of the most common questions that he gets is, should I wait to file a claim on my roof? And Josh really wanted to emphasize that if you have damage or you think you have damage, schedule that free roof inspection. What looks like maybe just a small leak or even a missing shingle today can actually turn into a major, expensive water damage in just weeks, especially with these storms that are heading our way later this week. Plus, there are deadlines for filing a claim with your insurance company, and you don't want to miss those deadlines. So once again, if it is time to schedule that free roof inspection, go ahead and call Josh and his team today. Now you can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Trump White House advisor Stephen Miller yesterday asked about priorities, the latest attempt to try and turn Americans against the results of the Trump administration's border policies, in which he has been wildly popular. And much to the chagrin of the Democrats, a majority of Americans do support deporting people who are in this country illegally. They have found, every week it's something new. Every week. How funny is it that a week ago the obsession was a Maryland man? That was like the most important cause in the world. You notice that isn't a really important cause anymore to the Democrats. All of a sudden, it's a 2-year-old that they falsely claim has been deported. Who knows what it'll be next week? This is how they use people. Someone that they will at any given moment pretend as if they are the greatest cause ever. They are the biggest victim ever. They, more than anyone, needs to be rescued until they find someone new that they think will give them more traction. And then they just dump the previous person overboard. It's you would think that it would be a wake-up call to some people at some point to recognize, wait a minute, maybe they're just using these people. Maybe they don't actually care about the person, because whatever happened to why did they give up so easily? Why, after a weekend news cycle, did they suddenly stop talking about this particular cause? Do you ever wonder that? So now it's the fake news story that Trump is deporting 2-year-olds. Now, this is all based around, if you don't know, a story about a woman who went through due process. She was in this country illegally. And the result of the due process was deportation. She has, I guess, a number of different kids, one of them which is 2. That sounds the saddest, so that's what they focus on. And she was asked, do you want to leave your kids here? They were born here, so they're U.S. citizens. Do you want to leave them here with family or friends or someone? And she's like, no, I want to take them with me. And so they're like, well, you have to fill out paperwork in order to do that. And she's like, okay. So she filled out the paperwork so that because she was given the choice as their mother to take her children with her. That is the media, what they're taking to claim that Donald Trump is deporting citizens that are children. No. Nope, that's not what's happening here. Stephen Miller was asked by some Yahoo. Stephen Miller, the advisor in the Trump administration. Is it really a worthwhile focus? You know, deporting moms and kids.
Is it the best use of the administration's resources to going after moms of young kids, basically?
Do you yourself have an opinion on the subject?
I'm more interested in yours.
Well, what percentage of let's just pick an even number, say 10 million illegal aliens. Let's say that Biden released, I think it's closer to 20 million. Let's say he released 10 million illegal aliens into the country over the last 4 years. What percentage do you think we should let stay here of those 10 million?
I'm not trying to do a game show.
No, but I'm saying, but
if you think that's the best use of...
Well, hold on, but is it your view that if a Democrat president releases 10, 15, 20 million illegals into the country, they all then should get to stay forever and for all of life?
Stephen, I don't have a view about what Democratic presidents do. I'm asking what the Republican president
does. So you don't want to answer the question because you know the answer is obvious. Everyone that Biden let in has to go home. Of course. I mean, it's a crazy thing to even ask. You think we should give administrative amnesty to some subset of the illegals that Biden? Here's how we're prioritizing it. ICE is going to continue to focus on raids against high-threat criminal aliens. We're going to use the entire force and power of the federal government to get them all home. Many will choose also to leave voluntarily and take advantage of the CBP Home app. But we are not going to ask taxpayers to subsidize the presence of a single illegal alien in this country.
Now, as usual, White House advisor Stephen Smith, he's on point here, or Stephen Miller, rather. And now, in all of that is a really good point that I think should be posed every time any journalist asks this sort of question. Well, I mean, why these people? Why? All right. Can we have the list of these subsets of illegals that you believe administratively we should violate the law and allow them to stay here? Because that's what they're asking. If the law is not going to be applied equally, if you are expecting, because that's the expectation here, is that the Trump administration pick and choose to whom the law applies. This is a woman who was ordered deported. We're so big into due process. Due process said you have to leave now. The media has a problem with this. You notice we're not hearing so much about due process in this particular case. See, all of you lefties are like, this isn't about the person, it's about due process. Oh, is it? Until due process results in something you don't like. Well, then it's not about due process, it's about priorities. Oh, priorities. It's not about priorities. I mean, we just wonder, how are you prioritizing? Right? What difference does that really make? Now, from a logistical standpoint, I don't think that's a question that it's out of bounds in terms of how is this going to be executed? Is it going to be effective? Is it going to be efficient? What does that look like? But it's being asked in the context as if their prioritizing somehow makes it wrong to hold this illegal accountable and to follow through on the due process results of her being deported. Whether or not the prioritizing is a wise one from whatever angle doesn't change the fact that this is an individual that has been ordered to be deported. One could argue, well, they should be done last, or, they should be done during the winter, or, those people people who have spring birthdays, whatever order that you think is the right order to prioritize, okay, that's fine, but it doesn't change the fact that this is someone whose due process has resulted in the law requiring her to be removed. Now, they know this. The question and the narrative is being framed, however, to make it seem as if something is being done illegal, something is being done outside of due process, that this is just wrong, see. That's all that matters. It's just wrong. But they can't tell you why it's wrong. Due process? The administration doesn't have it's what do they want for the critics that constantly claim that this is some administration that doesn't care about the law. Now they're criticizing the administration for following the law, and that is deporting these people. Well, because we don't like how it's been prioritized. Okay, that's a matter of personal preference. Glad you're not editorializing here, but the fact of the matter is that's not relevant to whether or not this person should be deported. I bet next week it'll be some new outrage, and this 2-year-old citizen that they continue to falsely claim was deported by Donald Trump, that'll be old news, just like the Maryland man is old news, and there'll be someone new that they'll find that we're all supposed to care about until we're not. You got to give Democrats this. Their attention span is so short. They always keep it fresh. At least with the faces, I mean, the song is the same, the story is the same. It's very worn out. It is usually a week, sometimes two, of outrage, and this is the greatest sin that's ever been committed. But the arresting of the judge, by the way, is another thing. In a week or two, that will be gone. The greatest injustice ever will be something of which that is no longer of concern, and there'll be some new outrage we're all supposed to be horrified over. If it were not for fear and disinformation, the Democrat Party would have nothing to talk about. Hey, go ahead.
Why do you have to be the way that you are?
Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you, Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air. Have you turned your AC on yet?
What? Yeah, actually, I did yesterday. I think for the first time, and part of the reason I was outside working to the point where I was very hot. Even though it didn't get that hot yesterday, and I came in and it was 74, and I thought,
Yeah.
well, my wife isn't going to deal with that anyway, and so I went ahead and I did turn it on.
That's funny you say that because I actually caved yesterday and I finally turned on my AC too.
If I hadn't been outside, I've been surprised this season, not just for me, but my wife too. She did turn it on in the middle of the night the other night, now that I think about it. But how one day it was like 72 and she didn't say anything. I was like, well, this is weird.
Yeah, no, I like it like a crisp 70. But hey, if you
My
are
wife
out there,
likes 68 or 67.
yeah, that is a good one too. If you're out there, you did the same thing yesterday, and maybe you experienced anything other than cool air, I do want to recommend Russell and his team over at Foreman Mechanical. Now, I've used Russell and his crew probably for the last 4 years, and I'm incredibly happy with just how punctual they are. They are fair, they are honest, and they even offer 24/7 emergency service lines because they get that things happen whenever. So if you're out there, you're still holding off on switching that AC on, but you want to get ahead of any issues, now is also a great time to schedule that AC at Tune Up today. Now you can find all of the contact information for Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com. Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see showers and thunderstorms throughout the day with a high around 68. That rain will continue throughout the night with a low around 59. For your Wednesday, more rain throughout the day with a high near 74. And looking ahead to Thursday, more rain in the forecast with a high near 72.
The disinformation campaign that the media has been running about Trump deporting 2-year-old citizens out of the country. This issue came up yesterday, or maybe it was the day before. No, I bet it would have been yesterday, on Charlemagne the God's show. And so he's got, here you're going to hear his news chick kind of talking a little bit about it, and then listen to Charlemagne's response.
And what's an impeachment going to do?
Right, exactly.
This will be his third time getting impeached. What's that going to do? But you know what, Morgan? I did not know until you said it about the 2-year-old. I mean, I knew about the 2-year-old getting deported, but all the news reports just kept saying that a 2-year-old got deported. I didn't know that the mother had got deported because she wasn't a citizen. I mean, I didn't know that.
That's going to be a big thing. This is probably going to be one of those, what do you call the first case, the precedent case, and what's going to probably be a long-standing situation for a lot of migrants. So it's something to watch.
All right. Well, so the latter part of that, this isn't a precedent. This is nothing new. This is going to be a precedent. Never in this country has an illegal alien been deported and then took their kids with them. What? Now, the more important part here is Charlemagne. Like, I've been seeing all these news reports. I didn't know that this 2-year-old, that actually it was the mother who was deported, who was here illegally. Of course you didn't know that. That's the point. I don't expect some of these people, and Charlemagne, he's become an influential voice for the left, and I shouldn't say for the left, but he's certainly an influential voice. He gets a lot of coverage. He has a show in New York. It's an urban station, and they talk a lot of political stuff. And he's not a talking point sort of guy. He is leftist, so he's wrong on a lot of stuff. But you know, some of these people, at what point? See, I would be angry, or at the very least, a little off-put. This is a guy who goes out on the radio every morning, and his credibility is important. I assume it's important to him, because if at some point people don't believe that the information you're providing is accurate or true, then you're really going to narrow down the number of people that listen to you. And so here, there's a subject matter they've been talking about for some time, because this has been in the news, and he's just now learning, because the media has been lying about this. Just now learning. After all these sites have been watching all these news reports, I didn't even know that actually it was a mother who was here illegally that was being deported that took her child with her. Now, you'd think that there would be a degree of frustration or anger at the media. A wake-up call that here you're somebody that to some degree pays attention to what's going on. You're watching these stories on the media, and you have been lied to, so you're out there providing false information. You're talking about something in which you don't know what you're talking about because you believe these mainstream media outlets. And the declaration, well, I didn't know that part of it. That's the whole point. You're not supposed to know that. That's why, you're not supposed to know that Maryland man actually isn't from Maryland or El Salvador. I mean, there were a lot of people, and not just left-wingers. I remember we talked about this because of a text message that came in saying, this deportation, it needs to happen, and I'm all for it. But, this citizen that accidentally got deported, I wish the Trump administration would just fix this problem. And that's somebody who pays attention to what's going on, thought that he was a Maryland citizen because of the way that the media deliberately attempts to mislead people. These people are liars. They're just liars. I don't know how else to accurately describe them. Now, I suppose some of it could be ignorance. If you are in a newsroom or an environment and everyone is lying and you are in a bubble and you're told, no, don't listen to those people. Oh, no, don't listen to One American News Network. Oh, no, don't read the Daily Caller. Don't go to the Federalist. Oh, those are all bad people. That's the real disinformation. And you lock yourself in a bubble with people who deliberately lie, then yeah, you may not be lying. You just are misinformed. Whichever. The result is the same. Your audience does not know what's going on. Yesterday, the White House reported on the achievement made in Trump's first 100 days dealing with border and illegal aliens, and it makes sense to lean into this because this is the one issue that people are very consistently supportive of. And we had mentioned yesterday, part of the emphasis was to put 100 signs depicting illegal aliens and what they had been arrested for, which, rape and murder, those sorts of things. Well, of course, immediately that makes the left adore these people and want to come to their defense. MSNBC just went apoplectic over this, and they blurred out, when they're doing the news story, they blurred out the faces of these individuals as if they were child victims. I mean, that's generally the standard of when you would blur out a face of someone that was a subject of a story, if it is a child victim or if it is somebody that is a minor accused of a crime. These are adults that have been arrested for everything from child rape to murder. This is the party that just a few years ago declared that they believe all women, that if a woman claimed that she was sexually harassed, you just believe her. I stand with her. I believe her. They have flipped from that to declaring MS-13 gang members who are accused of raping women and children that, now wait a minute here, we shouldn't be showing their faces. That's just unfair. We don't know that they've had their due process. Do you folks on the left not see that this happens? How do you rectify that? How do you go from believing you are righteous by saying a woman, even if there's no evidence whatsoever, if she claims that she was the victim of sexual harassment or sexual assault, it is our duty to believe her? How do you go from that being a righteous position to taking the opposite stance when the person who is accused of raping or murdering a woman? So is this how it works, I guess? A woman should be believed unless the person she's accusing is here illegally, then they move up in the hierarchy, and that's exactly what it is. When you understand that the Democrat Party doesn't see people as people, but sees people like as this totem pole, it's a hierarchy. And as time goes on, they move people around and shift people around. Once upon a time, women were at the top of the Democrat Party hierarchy. Now they're virtually near the bottom, where even men who claim to be women take precedent over women. And we definitely see it when it comes to being victims of crimes committed by illegal immigrants. The vast majority of victims at the hands of people who are in this country illegally are women. The Maryland man that elected Democrats flew down to champion, arguing that they were trying to get him back into his home with a woman that twice had to get a restraining order because he beat her. You see how far down you women have fallen in the minds of the Democrat Party? I mean, if you're going to get raped or murdered or assaulted, or you just better hope it's not by somebody who's in this country illegally, because that whole believe the victim stuff out the window. Because guess who the new victim is in the hierarchy? It's the illegal gang member rapist. In the minds of the Democrats, of course, not the rest of us as normal people. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Poor Sarah's been trying to, during the break, tell me a story
It's
about a
taken
dream.
about 25 minutes.
Now, I have seen, I don't know if it was a reel, a video, a meme once about when a girl tries to tell you her dream, and it all played off the idea that girls, they take a really long time to tell a dream story.
Well, this one is taking a very long time because I've had a minute and 20 seconds to try to tell you it.
No, that is true. It's a good exercise in brevity, learning how to really.
I was trying to get through it.
I know. Well, we'll have another break coming up. In the meantime, Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor, the website hunterhardscapes.com, custom landscaping installation, and it's tailored to lifestyle, not just the square footage of your backyard. So often, that's how that stuff is done, right? You hire someone, and they may do 8 or 9 different, things, and one of them is, we can do patios, and they come out, and they'll just measure off, and that's pretty much what determines it. They don't spend time getting to know your lifestyle. What is it you want to do? Are you going to entertain? Are you going to spend out here at night? So it would be great to have lighting out here that's accommodating. Do you want a built-in music system, a water feature? Maybe if you want a more of a serenity setting. These are all things that make them premier. And they then don't just drive to the big box store in order to get the product. Their product is premium level that isn't available to the average person. It is Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor. By the way, it's not just for your home. If you own a business, this is definitely going to level you up to a significant degree. HunterHardscapes.com. You can find them at KSGF.com under Nick's endorsements. Very good people. Michelle Obama is once again out there. Oh, God. Is she becoming the most insufferable person?
She really is. Is this about Trump's deportation policy?
Yes. She's just up at night thinking about this. Oh, are you? I mean, first off, I think most of us recognize that, was it Obama deported more people in his first or second term than Trump did in his first term? There was an entire article at one point when Biden was running for president and this issue of deportations came up, and it was all about deportations and the numbers, and then it was explaining the difference. Well, see, Obama, when he did it, he focused on people who were also criminals. Well, of course, that's what the Trump administration is doing, but we're told that, well, those criminals, we don't know for sure they committed the crimes. So anytime Democrats are forced to face the reality that deportations aren't a new thing, that they have happened under previous presidents, including the great Obama, a.k.a. Jesus, they're like, well, that's different, see? Well, of course it's different, because it was a Democrat. Of course it is. That is the difference. Now, Michelle Obama apparently wasn't kept up at night worrying about deportations under her husband, because her husband becoming president was the first time she was actually ever proud to be an American. It's only when Donald Trump does it. I guess there's some jealousy there. She prefers the way that her husband did it. Her husband was the one also that had the cages built to put kids in, the ones that Trump was blamed for. She said, and I was going to play the audio, but I just can't stand her voice, and so I'm just going to read to you what she said. Quote, well, it's the current climate for me. It's, what's happening to immigrants. Now, illegal immigrants is what she's referencing here, but she's dishonest, so she couches it as immigrants. She goes on to say, it's not the fear for myself anymore. I drive around in a 4-car motorcade with a police escort. I'm Michelle Obama. I do still worry about my daughters in the world, even though they are somewhat recognizable. What is she, I don't even know what she's implying here. Is she implying that at one point she was afraid she was going to be deported? But she's not worried about that now, but her daughters, because they are not as recognizable, they may be deported? I mean, that's what it sounds like she's claiming here. This woman is a lunatic. I think there are a lot of people that a decade ago were just fawning and gushing over how wonderful Michelle Obama is. They're starting to kind of wake up and be like, you know what, I think this broad might actually be just a little bit crazy. She went on to say, so my fears are for what I know is happening out there in streets all over the city. Now that we have leadership that is sort of indiscriminately determining who belongs and who doesn't, well, that's not true. It's a pretty easy determination. Those who are here illegally are the ones who don't belong here. Those who are here legally are the ones who belong here. That's not indiscriminate. That's very discriminatory. Like, those who are here legally, you're good. You're here illegally, okay, so this is not indiscriminate. She continues, and we know that those decisions aren't being made with courts and with due process, and that it's being made like this cop that pulled my brother over when he was 12. I mean, talk about cop hatred. Evidently, she claims her brother, when he was 12 years old, was riding a bike and was accused by a black cop, by the way, of accusing him of stealing the bike or questioning him over it. So that's, I mean, you talk about an obsession. Still to this day, she's talking about that. Obama continued to say that with so much bias, racism, and ignorance fueled against people of color in the United States, she fears there won't be enough advocates to protect immigrants. Quote, you don't look like somebody that belongs, you know. I can determine just by looking at you that you're a good person or you're a not good person, knowing that there's so much bias and so much racism and so much ignorance that fuels these kinds of choices. I worry for people of color all over the country. She said, I don't know that we will have the advocates to protect everyone. That frightens me. It keeps me up at night. I know that there are, and I see that when I'm driving around L.A., I'm just looking at the faces of folks who could be victims, and I'm wondering, how are you feeling? How do you feel standing at the bus stop? How do you feel comfortable going to work, going to school? And when you know that there could be people out here judging you and who could upend your life in a second, that's who I worry for right now. Now, aside from the fact that increasingly Michelle Obama has been demonstrating that, aside from the fact that she's a spoiled, ungrateful elitist, she's not a very bright person. Talk about being detached. Now, let's say for a moment that she's painting a picture that is based on reality in her mind, and that she drives through L.A. and she sees a person at a bus stop, and she thinks, you know what? I wonder if they're afraid to be there because of immigration policies. Do you know why people in L.A. are afraid to stand at a bus stop? Because crime is out of control, and oftentimes at the hands of illegal immigrants. Trust me, law-abiding citizens who are afraid to ride the bus or to get on a train or to cross the street or to go into a Walgreens to shop or pick up a prescription, they're not afraid of immigration policies. They're afraid of the policies that have led to people who are criminals, oftentimes violent criminals, feeling that they are the ones in control and they can do whatever the heck it is that they want to do. When you have stores that are closing shop in cities like LA or San Francisco or other cities that are run by blue DAs and run by Democrat politicians, when they're closing up, they're not closing up because of immigration policies. They're closing up because people are afraid to come into their stores because of crime. Or they're afraid, and they just, as moral people, don't want to put their employees in harm's way. And as the Democrat Party increasingly is sending the message to people that are gang members from other countries, be it Argentina or El Salvador, that whatever crime they commit, they will loudly defend them, up to and including travel to their home country to lobby on their behalf, that empowers these people to know that they will have safe haven with one of the two major political parties in this country. The Democrat Party has become the single greatest lobbyist for MS-13 and Trans de Aragua, the two most violent terrorist organizations that are currently operating in the United States of America. You know, this is a party that has gone from actively being the greatest defender and promoter of Hamas to shifting to two of the terrorist organizations that are currently operating here in the United States of America. And they don't deny it. That's the incredible thing about this political party. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. If you're watching us on this stream or listening to us, you are hearing something that others listening over air are not, because there are EAS warnings, which we don't have control over, emergency alert system. There are storms that are headed this way. What exactly is it? Do you know offhand? We've got a couple minutes here.
It just ended. Yeah, so the National Weather Service in Springfield, they've issued a couple of different tornado warnings. The latest one is going to run until 9:15 for Lawrence County and Dade County.
Okay.
That's going to, they say that locations that may be impacted include Everton, Red Oak, Pennsboro, Miller, Halltown, and Russell. And that also includes Interstate 44 between mile markers 56 and 58. So if you're out there, just please take precaution and make sure you keep yourself safe on the roadways.
Yeah, and if the immediate Springfield area of Christian or Greene County, Webster County, if it looks like there is going to be anything that's immediate in terms of tornado, we will go over to our partners at Ozarks First, and we'll carry what it is that they're carrying. They're right now, covering that. But it's outside our immediate area. So, I mean, it's somewhat in, but we focus more when it comes to the tornadic activity and the more immediate Springfield area, Republic, Nix, Ozark, and so forth. So point being is we will make sure that we keep you updated on that should it become something that is more immediate. Reminder that we do have happy hour at Retro Metro coming up on Friday. Cam and Mark will be there. Those of you that are great escapers, especially from a few years ago, you remember Mark, Cam's husband. And if you haven't had a chance to meet Mark, you've just gone on the last couple of Great Escapes. Fantastic guy. And Cam tells me he will be at Retro Metro for our happy hour this Friday, 4 to 6. And if you are someone who hasn't gone on a Great Escape, and if there still are any rooms available, we've got 10 at this point that are available. We have filled up the rest. So of those 10 rooms, if they are still available and you have any questions, you're kind of curious about going, you're wondering about this or that, then certainly Cam will be on hand to answer any of those questions. Otherwise, I recommend you get a hold of her and go ahead and reserve your slot early, or now it's not early rather, but before it is too late. Details at ksgf.com. Glenn Beck's coming up next. I'm Nick Reed.